Hey everybody, so we're going to get started with working with flat files. So we're going to download some data from the World Bank in the form of a CSV file. It's going to be intentionally messy data, and then we're going to work to clean that up in this next series of videos. Okay, so next let's go to our favorite browser, and we're just going to Google here World Bank Development Indicators. And when we do that, we should see a link like this, and you can go ahead and click on that. Okay, once that opens up, you should be on this country tab here. We already know which database we're in. We're in the World Bank World Development Indicators database, and that's fine. So next, go to country. Select on this countries tab. You have three options here: all countries and aggregates. Aggregates refers to regional aggregates like for Latin America or South Asia or Africa or what have you. Countries is individual countries, and all is both of those. We just want the countries, so click on the countries tab, and then click on this little check mark here to select all of the countries. From there, go down to series, and we're going to be working with female labor force participation data for this particular exercise. So if you just type in labor force participation rate and you hit search and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a bunch of statistics for labor force participation rates. And the one we want is for the working age, for females, for the working age population, 15 to 64, modeled ILO estimate. So let's go ahead and click on that. And next we want to define the time series, and we're just going to look at the last 50 years. So click on 50, hit apply changes. Okay, and we should see data for 217 countries, one series, which is our female labor force participation rate, and data for the last 50 years. And next, we're just going to go ahead and download those data. We'll download them to a CSV file. And then if we click on what that file that we just downloaded, we'll see here two files. Just open this up a little bit here. We have a data.csv file and a series metadata.csv file. We don't want the series metadata. We just want the data.csv, and we're going to move this over to our project folder. So there's lots of ways we can move this, but let's just go ahead and copy it. So right click and copy, and then once you're in that folder, just go ahead and paste the file into that folder. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do is just to go ahead and rename this file, because it's a little bit it's not a very intuitive file name, just some machine-generated file name. So let's go ahead and change that. And we'll just call it messy underscore World Bank or WB underscore data.csv. You want to go back to your RStudio IDE and the Quarto document, QMD file that we created. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete out the text from the template in the document, and we're going to leave that level 2 header there, and we can add a header of our own, something like reading data from a flat file. And remember that the purpose of a Quarto document is to integrate your text with your code, right? To weave them together. So here we can get some practice with that, just writing some descriptive text talking about what we're going to be doing in this section of the document. So here we can say something like, now we are going to read some data from a CSV file into R using the read CSV function from the readr package. And notice here how I put the names of the function and the package in backticks That way, when you render it, they'll be highlighted as code, right? So anytime we have code in line, we're going to highlight that by using backticks in our Quarto document. Okay, and then we can say, then we will view the document using the glimpse function from the dplyr package. All right. And so next thing we want to do is we want to start an R code chunk. So you can do that with 3 backticks, a bracket R, and 3 more backticks. That's your code chunk, and notice it gets highlighted there in the Quarto document. So that's one way to do it. Another slightly easier way is just to use this shortcut up here. Click on that, and that will give you a code chunk in your document. Okay. So I think it's good practice to go ahead and add a label, use the hash pipe operator here to indicate that you're going to be giving Quarto a chunk option, a code chunk option. So in this case, we're going to be giving it a label, and we can just call it something like, and call it whatever you want, but we'll call it read CSV. And that just gives it a name so that if there's an error or something like that, you know which code chunk is acting up. Okay, so from here, what we can do is we can start with the code that we're going to write for this section. The first thing we want to do is we want to load packages. So let's write a little comment here that says load packages. And so in our code chunk, or in any R code, if you want to insert a comment, you just put a hash mark, and that just tells R not to evaluate that line. It's a comment. It'll recognize it as a comment. So let's go ahead and load our 2 packages in. We're going to be using readr, and we're going to be using dplyr. All right. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to read data from the CSV file into an object called World Bank Data Messy. And I'm probably over commenting here, but since this is our first code chunk together, let's just be very clear about what we're doing. So here, like we said in the comment, we're going to create an object that's going to contain our data frame, and we're going to call that object wb_data_messy. And then we're going to use an assignment operator. Assignment operator is this operator where we have a less than sign and a dash. That tells R put what we're going to type next into this object. Okay. So we're going to use the read CSV function to read the data in and then put it into this object. So next thing we have to do is tell R where the data are. And so remember in the last lesson we had created this data folder in our project folder, and if we click on that we see our CSV file. So we have to give it this path. It already knows because of the .rproj file, it knows that we are in a project folder. So we just have to give it the part of the path that leads it to the data folder and the CSV file inside of the data folder. So here we're going to type data_messy_wb_data.csv. All right. And now the last step here is just to view the data, and we're going to use the glimpse function from the dplyr package to view the data. And then I'll show you one other way to look at the data as well. Okay, and that's the end of our code chunk there. And let's just go ahead and run that code chunk and make sure everything works. Fingers crossed. There we go. We have a data frame with 222 rows, 54 columns. And it's telling us a delimiter for the CSV file was a comma. That's why it's called CSV, comma separated values. Okay, and so what Glimpse is showing us is the name of all of the columns in the data frame. So we have a $ and then a column, the name of the column. and then the first few rows of data. Okay, and then it's also telling us the data type. All right, and we can see just looking at this that there are some issues with these data. First, there's a lot of missing data here. Second, these column names are a little bit unconventional. Usually we would want our column names to be in snake case, which is where everything's lowercase with underscores. We also see that all of the data are represented in character format, whereas these are numeric variables. And then we're also seeing that the years are in the columns rather than in the rows. Okay, and this is all stuff that we're going to fix in the next lesson or next few lessons. Okay, and so the last thing I want to say here is that with Glimpse, it's showing us the data in this convenient format where the columns are essentially in the rows. What if you want to see the data in a more traditional format where the columns are vertical and the rows are horizontal? Well, for that, you can use the view function. So you can type view World Bank underscore data and then hit enter, and that'll bring up the data frame in your viewer there. And the other way you can do that is just by clicking on the name of the data frame down here, right? And it'll show you the data. Here we can see the issue with the data being in wide format a little bit more clearly. Wide format meaning that the years here are in the columns rather than in the rows, and that's something we're going to be working on when we pivot the data later in this module. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to start cleaning up the data. We're going to start by reshaping it and taking care of this issue of the data being in wide format by pivoting it to long format. See you in the next lesson.